My name is Martha Novak. I'm talking from a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, and we're going to talk about all aspects of relationships today. And this is a series, so we'll keep on with this subject. We're awfully glad you're with us today. Let's got a lot to say, so I'm for just jumping in there. So let's go on and do a quick prayer to get ourselves all centered and on the same page, and we'll launch into the show, okay? All right. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for the oneness that we are experiencing today, the unity of wanting to know more of ourselves and of the you, which we are as love. We open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do beyond the barking dog. And we open ourselves to the fact that we know nothing, for it is the you through us that know it all. And you're not only coming through us, but through all things. And we appreciate so much the opportunity to be together, to learn, to grow, to change, and to reach our potentials. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of it, every bit of it. Even the parts that hurt, they all have a purpose, and they all have a reason. And we thank you so much for it all. Show us now how to heal and how to change with courage and in truth. We thank you so much, and so it is. Amen. Guys, great to be with you today. We're going to talk about several subjects, and I'm going to touch on several subjects today that if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you've probably heard me mention. However, they're important to talk about. Two things occur to me when hello, Kat. Good to talk to you. I'm so glad to see you and your pretty face down there. Thank you so much for being here. So when we're talking about relationships, and these are relationships with anybody, guys, the same rules apply. Of course, they get more critical when it's an intimate partner, but you can translate this way of being really with everybody. One of the things that occurs to me is an article that I read within the last 5 years. And the article said that the thing that keeps people together is novelty. Now, that was their word. I think novelty, in my opinion, is learning things and following your passions and your dreams and your knowledge and getting to be good at something, study something. I have a dog that is wanting to say hello. Say hello, Toffle. This is Toffle, guys, and he's a very, very good boy. And he often comes up and helps me do my work. Hard to do when I'm wearing kind of this shawl thing because he's trying to get on it. Novelty. So I think this was a study that found this, that studied what made people not only have long marriages, but what made them happy and interesting, you know? And I thought it was really interesting that it was novelty. In other words, that you are developing yourself and your partner is developing himself or herself. And then you all just can't wait to share that. I think that's really important. It's not even too that we will understand what the other person is saying. My partner, my husband is a engineer, and boy, is he good at what he does. And I'm an artist. I'm a writer. This is what I do, right? And I have so much fun, though, seeing him excited about something. You see, it isn't that I have to understand. I don't have to understand too much. I just need to understand the basics and watch him and his joy. That's a very precious thing. And I think the opposite is true as well. I think he, even though I tend to write women's fiction, I tend to write it with some sort of magical element in it. Man, he dives in there and he gives it his best shot with notes, and I appreciate that so much. And you know what the irony is? The irony is he always comes up with the best notes. I mean, he comes up with absolutely what the book was missing. It's pretty amazing. So that kind of interest, and that kind of sharing, that kind of helping each other work through is really important. I think that novelty means we learn from each other. But what happens if you are defensive, or you are afraid you're not good enough and are, don't want any notes? We don't grow together. The relationship is not all it could be, you see? At the heart of all of this, guys, is knowing yourself really, really well, and change. Those are really important. You must know yourself and develop yourself. And you must change if you want a partner. I think it's just fine not to have a partner. Really. But I think that a very natural part of us does want a partner, and I'll tell you why. Certainly, if you are interested in what these shows are about, which is consciousness and God and the energy of God being love, which is all you are, and that's your highest self, I think we reach a point in our development. Excuse me, my clothes are falling off because my dog is lying on them and pulling. So right now I'm just fooling with my couture. All right, hopefully that would be the end. Obviously not for him. That's not the end. I think it is very important as we develop ourselves that we open something that says, I am learning about love. I will always learn about love. It's my path. And I want to give it away. I want to choose someone to give this to. And create and experience the loop that love is. We send it out, we get it back. We send it out, we get it back. Now, the irony about all of this, I think, is that we can't do this for the selfish reasons that we all start out doing it for. Okay? I have had 2 marriages. I'm in my second one. My first marriage, I was married to a very, very dear man. But I wasn't mature enough to know what I was doing there. I don't even think I'm mature enough to know what I'm doing now, but I know a lot more than I did. And I will always be learning from this great individual called Michael. So I think that it is a natural desire that as we learn to be more loving in ourselves, that we seek to give it away. Now, last week I challenged you and I said, why do you want a partner? And I told you I would give you the answer. The only answer really that there is. You do it to complete that love. The love that is in you. The love you know about. That's the only answer there is. If you're looking for somebody to be a companion, you can get a dog. If you're looking for somebody to take out the trash for you, you can hire somebody to do that. Now, this is about completing the love that you are by giving it away and getting it back, and maturing and being in a relationship that challenges you enough for you to get mad sometime and for you to realize there's an unloving place in me that wasn't big enough to handle the situation when I felt somehow threatened, and knowing how to emotionally mature and get through it. I think I said last week, it bears repeating. You have 3 choices when somebody doesn't get along, when you're not getting along with a partner. Your first choice is to divorce. Your second choice is to take what the problem is and sweep it under the rug. Problem with that is after a week, whatever that was that's under the rug doesn't have a name anymore. You've forgotten it. You've forgotten the details. The time for you to find out what was really wrong and give it a name is in the first 24 to 36 hours. So you have a rug in the room with a great big pile under the rug in the middle. Nothing has a name, and you live with it. I think that causes a lot of resentment. The third thing that is what I'm strongly recommending is that you learn about yourself. In that, you learn about other people and how we're all wired. And you learn how, in an emotionally mature way, to deal with problems and work through them. I think it's extremely important to find a partner that, while he may not speak your language, for example, Michael is not, he's wonderful with words and he's very funny, but words are not his thing. He'll tell you that. He doesn't particularly care about words. I care about words. I'm the one that really cares about words. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But we talk when something comes up for us. I'll tell you a funny story. I have told this before, but I don't know on what show and when. So here's an example, okay? I'll be pointing out little things along the way. So we were actually in Italy. My husband's European, so we were in Italy. And one night, after spending all day together, going around and looking at this little town and, having a perfectly marvelous time, we ended up at a lovely restaurant. We were having dinner, and he started being really mean to me. He started sniping at me. And I, at first, was very nice about it and, said, what's going on? And because Michael is not good with words, I have seen over time, we've been married now for 9, going on 10 years, and I've noticed that he can come up with what he's feeling and what the words are, but it takes about 12 hours. It takes 12 hours. So this was in the very early days of our marriage, so I didn't know that 12-hour thing. And I got real frustrated, that he was being mean to me, and I didn't know what I had done. I mean, if I had done something, I would have apologized, but I didn't have any idea what I'd done. So we went to bed mad that night. I do recommend doing that, because sometimes you can't do anything else, because it sometimes takes people a certain amount of time to know what everybody's feeling. So I went to bed. All right, he went to bed. And the next morning, first of all, it was very cold where we were. And so we were in this lovely hotel suite overlooking a vineyard, and the covers were completely piled up on Michael. And I got out of bed first, and I was, getting dressed and getting ready to go. And I hear this little voice Michael's, saying to me, you can't put on your eyelashes this morning, because I wear false eyelashes. If you all saw me without makeup, I look completely different. I really do. I look like, I don't know who I look like. Maybe I sometimes get Sissy Spacek, because she's got those blonde lashes. But anyway, so I wheeled around, still angry at him, and said, why can't I wear my eyelashes? And he, little voice, said, because I drank them. Because I drank them. I put them in a little baby oil, right? And it'll kind of help me pull the glue that you use off, for those of you that don't know about eyelashes. And he thought it was water. And so he went into the bathroom that night and had a nice glass of eyelashes and baby oil. And the next little voice said, and it was horrible. I still roll when I think of that story. I could not continue to be angry, and he couldn't continue to be angry. And we burst out laughing, and we laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And then we talked. Now, here's what the problem was. Michael didn't, hello, Lisa. Oh, thank you, darling. You're so sweet. Well, I'm so glad to talk with you too, my dear. All my friends writing in today, and that thrills me. So, what the problem had been is that Michael didn't know me very well as an adult. We had known each other 50 years before. But when we were driving around Italy, I was saying, oh my God, look at that house. How interesting is that? Oh, I wonder what that looks like on the inside. Look at that backyard. Look at that patio. Look at that. This is what I do, by the way. But he didn't know it. And he knew I had a very active business that I was devoted to, and that that English language was the language that I was trying to be really, really good and precise in as a writer, as a teacher. And he thought I was jerking his chain about whether I was going to live in Europe or not, which I think, that's his home. Of course he would have loved. I told him then, I said, Michael, ever since it dawned on me, probably 12, 13, 14 years old, that one day I could have a house, I've been doing this with houses. I look at them. I even love driving around at night and seeing how houses decorated on the inside when the lights are on. I'm not a peeping Tom, guys, but I just love houses, This is just so exciting. I'm doing it up here where we live. Now he's used to it, right? But it was a misunderstanding. It was nothing more than that. It was a misunderstanding. Now, this is the kind of thing you will need to have a vocabulary for. Because if you don't have a vocabulary for it, you will get divorced, or you have to sweep it under the rug where nobody calls anything by name. In the moment, and I say in the moment because it's a misnomer. I say in the moment, meaning anywhere from 12 to 36 hours. You all need to talk about this, but you don't need to stand there before anybody knows why they're angry and harangue each other. You don't do that. You don't need to do that. It's not healthy for the relationship. Keep in mind that one of the big problems in relationship, and the thing that brings it down, is that nobody feels safe. Okay, so here was a time where we really weren't safe with each other. He misunderstood me. I'm just furious at him for being mean to me and not knowing why. And he couldn't tell me why that night, you see. We could have walked away from that. We don't walk away from anything. And when you're looking for someone, you want to make sure that they can talk with you about things like that. And they don't walk away either. Because You've got to make sure, and I'm saying they can't walk away ultimately, because you may need time away from each other. I say take it with the full understanding and the absolute promise to yourself and your partner that you're going to talk about this. You cannot sweep it under the rug. Okay? Thank you for hearing that. Now, last week, we were talking about a man named John Gottman, who is a psychologist, I believe. There is a part of his program that I think is helpful. I'm not telling you everything because I'm a little ambivalent about. Well, you keep in mind that other people are doing what they do, and I'm over here teaching consciousness and enlightenment. All right, so there's a different end here. Hello, Sheila. Oh, hello, sweetheart. Good morning to you. So I do think this is helpful, though, that he identifies 4 horsemen of that will pull a relationship down. And he's done extensive research on this, which I'm sure is pretty valid. The 4 horsemen, the reason he calls it that, if you will remember, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I can't remember. I know one of them was death. Behold, a pale horse, and the rider is death. These were the 4 horsemen that were bringing about the end of the world. I think one was destruction. I can't remember everything. But anyway, that's the image that he's using. Now, these were the 4 horsemen of communication that bring down a relationship if they are not addressed. I thought we'd put these on the table because I did think they were pretty good. Okay. First of all, I want to put on the table that nobody has a right to tell you how to feel. You get to feel the way you do. It's just, if you're going to have a good relationship, you better work out what's going on, and you better find the misunderstanding. It's probably that. Once in a while, there'll be a philosophical issue, and you'll see the world quite differently. And in those cases, you just have to let everybody have their own feelings about these things. One cannot control how another person feels and thinks, right? You can't do that. So I want to go beyond Gottman before I tell you what he said here, because how you interpret what I'm about to tell you that he says is through the 2 minds. This is the part that he's missing, because we've got the ego child's mind, the fear-based mind. You've heard this story. It's self-indulgent, fear-based, thinks of self all the time at the exclusion of the other person, thinks of the other person all the time at the exclusion of self, and that makes this person a victim, and so it's still all about the self. Okay. And then there is the higher self mind. This is the love-based part of you that honors yourself and others, and that cares and finds global solutions and much, much more. That's the real creative self as well. Now, the reason I'm taking time to say that to you before I read some of this to you and tell you about it is that he's saying, here's criticism. For example, criticism is the first horseman. There's a way to criticize, isn't it? That there's a way to critique. There's a way to offer something from the ego child's mind and from the highest self. You know, if I come at you and say, you're absolutely stupid and you've always been stupid concerning this. Wow, that is a criticism right out of the ego child's mind. Okay? There's a fear behind that you're not seeing it my way, and anything else other than my way is stupid, etc., etc. We can't do that. Of course, the highest self would say, well, darling, why did you do that? I'm trying to understand your thought pattern of this. Oh, well, that's a valid thought pattern too. You know, I think we have a choice here of what to do. I would say that we should make this choice because of this. What do you think? You see, that's a higher self. Now, without him saying these two minds are active, he just makes statements. And so I wanted you to hear what I'm about to tell you relative to what you all know now about the two minds. Where some might, he goes on to say, critique or complain about a specific behavior of their partner, criticism touches on the partner's core as a human being. Now, I think this is very important to know. Nobody should criticize you for who you are, not for your character and not for your value. All right? One of my values is sincerely caring about people. Now, if Michael came along and criticized me doing that, it would really be cruel, because that's really part of who I am. If he came after my creativity, instead of just offering helpful suggestions that help me be more creative and better at what I do, which is exactly what he does. But if he attacked it, that would be terrible. That's the criticism that Gottman's talking about here. When one partner attacks the other's partner's personality or character, and I will say value, what they consider absolutely valuable in the world, there can be a lot of arguing. Even without saying, look at what they did, you intrinsically know that somebody has stepped over the line with you, or, by the way, that you are stepping over the line. And we want to wake you up, certainly, to that. Criticism, if not dealt with right away, can be used as a gateway for the other three horsemen to come galloping through. Due to criticism attacking a person's character, the person attacked is certainly going to feel, thank you, Sheila. Sheila was just commenting on the information. Yes, oh, that's wonderful, Sheila. I just read both your comments. Thank you so much. She has said that she has a sincere value too, which she cares very much about people. And that's very true. So somebody can't come along and attack that about you. You see? I mean, they can, but this is really how I lose my temper. I'm not a redhead for nothing, I guess. It's a little prejudice when I say that. But the truth is here, I'm pretty cool about everything. I believe in live and let live. But if anybody attacks those things that are my values, that are intrinsic to me, my love of people and animals, my creativity, the things that I truly care about and try to honor in the world, man, I'll come out like a mother bear. It's extremely important for you to recognize when somebody's doing that. I had a client who is just one of the dearest people in the world, and here's something that she did. It's not quite the same thing, but it rather fits into the category. Her son and daughter were coming to visit at Christmas, and she insisted that they see the rest of the family. And she said, you simply have to do this. And it was a demand. And I pulled her back from that, and I said, you can suggest that, but you can't make a demand like that. You can't. It's over the line. It's implying a lot of things, that they're not nice people if they don't do it, that and many, many other things. I won't go into that because it's not exactly what we're talking about, but there is one thing that we're talking about here that I want you to know. There is a boundary. There's a border. I don't want you stepping over that, and I sure don't want anybody else stepping over that. And you have an absolute right as an individual to call somebody whose toes are over the line. And I want you to do that. You don't have to be cruel to them. What you need to tell them is they've gone too far, and to get back over there. That who you are and what you are and what your values are and your character is your domain. Your domain. I see this a lot in partners, particularly when the partners are man and woman, because I see a great men tend to be really good without they're out there killing the wildebeest, and I'm trying not to be sexist about this, but our DNA, they're out there protecting us, the tribe, and killing the wildebeest and bringing home food and everything. And the women are healing and taking care of the family and all that kind of stuff. So why would a partner be angry at the woman for saying, be sure and take your vitamins? Don't you tell me what to do, don't you? No, that's our domain. I'm not going to hold you down and force your mouth open and put them in there. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to remind you to do it. And you have to understand the spirit in which it's given. You understand? Now, I don't believe in people haranguing people. I think when you say it once, and if people don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. And you have to look away. Okay? We all are flawed. Every one of us. Man, woman, we're all flawed. You've got to know where to help. And I think this is important because a lot of times the most loving thing we can do is just to look away. For example, this woman was not a client of mine, but she was a friend that I knew when I lived in a different city. And she was telling me that she is so embarrassed when she and her husband go to a party. She said for some reason he is just a pig at a buffet, and she says he goes and has a plate full of food, and yet he's doing this the whole time at the table, and he's not vacating the table so that other people can get to the food, and he's just standing there and shoveling it in. And I said, well, she was asking me what to do, and I said, well, have you talked to him about it? Always my first, oh yes, I've told him over and over and over and over again, over and over again. Again, that's making the partner feel unsafe. And I said, how important is it in the scheme of things? And she says, well, he's a wonderful man. He's a kind person. He's a good provider. He loves our kids. He advises them beautifully. He's has a great job. He's a good guy. And I said, then you'll have to look away. Just don't look. And that's the most loving thing to do in a case like that. He obviously wants to keep doing the same thing over and over again. Now, if I were him and somebody gave me a note like that, I'd go to somebody like me and find out why I have to do that and why I have no consciousness about that. And I would try to change. But this guy obviously just simply didn't want to. Well, if that's his only flaw, okay, that's good. Okay. Certainly, someone that attacks your character and your values makes you feel hurt, rejected, and even assaulted if the criticism is severe enough. If this has been going on in your childhood for a really long time, if this is what your childhood was like, constant harangue, constant criticism, constant, you probably aren't going to recognize it as an adult and know where your boundaries are and your lines are being crossed. You may even cross your own. And that's the advantage of working with somebody like me or my team, because we're going to show you granted, there is no normal. There is a range, however, of normal. And that's all we're trying to do, is show you where that is, so you can be out there in the world and protect yourself if you need to. How do I mean protect yourself? I don't mean, I mean, say. I don't think that's a good idea that you said that. You are attacking who I am. You're attacking my character. I'm sorry that you're hurt. Obviously you are. I've done something to hurt you, that you're coming out that way with the big guns. But stop that, because I'm not going to listen to it. And when you know what's bothering you, we'll talk. Okay? That's how to do it. If you don't correct criticism, it leads to what they call the second horseman, which is much more serious, and that is contempt. Contempt. Contempt is a ploy used to psychologically damage a partner. It is to be outwardly, the intent is to be outwardly unkind, to attack a person's sense of self. This is not always done with words, but nonverbal cues too, such as eye rolling, body language, tone of voice. Guys, clean this up if you recognize you. Contempt in the form of words can be categorized as insulting. There can be name calling, sarcasm. Remember, sarcasm is when one person is laughing. It's not a good form of humor. And sarcasm, of course, sometimes runs in cultures. It is always saying the other person is stupid. So I see no reason to use sarcasm with anybody you love. You can use hostile humor that isn't sarcasm, and you can use mockery. All of those things are contempt. The contemptuous partner is aiming to make the other feel loathed and valueless. Okay, hang on just a minute. I leaned on the wrong bloomin' thing. And I hope I have not closed out Blog Talk Radio, but I may have. I should always move my computer. I don't know whether if I have, I'm sorry guys. I think I leaned on it. Okay. Let's go back to work. Nothing I can do about that now. The contemptuous partner is aiming to make the other person feel loathed and valueless. Certainly, this kind of chronicity in a relationship can pull down your immune system and lead to all sorts of illness. Contempt is also, according to Gottman, the highest predictor of divorce or separation among couples. When a partner might say, "You are so dumb, even our 3-year-old can think of something better," what they've said is, "You're an idiot." You can't say that to each other. Here's an interesting thing. Maybe you have never realized it, but human beings have rights. We have rights. And you do not have a right to talk to another person that way. You have a right to your feelings, and you have a right to work out your feelings or to stay in the pit of despair yourself, but you don't have a right to say that to somebody. You just don't. And if you're saying that to anyone in an intimate relationship, you've just destroyed all trust. All right. So contempt plays with the struggling partner's feelings of inadequacy. And that's not loving. What is loving is an invitation to ask any question and get an answer if you don't know. An invitation to be vulnerable. We all know something or something about some things and nothing about other things. Okay? Why isn't that all right? That makes the world go around. Now, you keep in mind that it is that kind of invitation and that kind of openness that helps a couple feel safe with each other, bond, and grow together through the years. And I think the really wonderful thing about growing together through the years is uncovering these unloving places in us. We might have a tendency to feel contempt for someone who is thwarting us or not doing what we're saying, for example. But do they deserve that, or is that our issue? I'm saying it's our issue. And we ought to straighten it out inside us so that we can treat ourselves and the people we love better. The third horseman is, according to John Gottman, is defensiveness. Now, I'm going to, before I read what he has to say here, I'm going to put my 2 cents worth in. Here's my definition of defensiveness. Defensiveness is when, if you're the one being defensive, is when you agree with the other person's criticism of you, but you're not yet ready to admit it to yourself. It might be a complete lie. It might be something you suspect. It might be something that is true or not true. Doesn't matter. You are agreeing with them and not yet ready to admit it to yourself. That said, let's go on with what he says. Where contempt and criticism are a form of attacking, defensiveness is usually the reaction that one takes after being assailed. The defensive partner sees himself or herself as the victim. Guys, we don't want to be that. Defensiveness can take its form in multiple ways. Number 1, the first is when a partner makes excuses. The excuses usually entail an external factor that was out of the defensive partner's control. It's not my fault. Traffic was just awful. No one could get through there and be here on time. Instead of just saying, sorry, I'm late. I mean, it's part of humanness, isn't it? I mean, what are your rights as a human being? Your rights as a human being is being late from time to time, if the traffic's bad. Okay. Number 2, another form of defensiveness is cross-complaining, where one partner complains, then the other partner complains about something different, thereby ignoring the first partner's complaint. This may look like one partner stating, I don't have any time, to myself, and the other partner responding with, work today was awful and no one seemed to listen to me and nothing got done. I have an example of this, but it's not quite fitting into his criteria. I remember working on a client who was a dear man, but he was a terrible narcissist and had a little bit of Asperger's thrown in, right? And I don't take phone calls while I am doing people's sessions. It's just, I don't want to be interrupted. I want to give you my full time. And he was sitting right in front of me, and I explained to him that I was going to have to take a phone call that day because my surrogate mom, somebody I loved very, very much, that I had in my life for many, many years, was dying, actively dying, and on her deathbed, and I had been asked by her son to help with him, the emotional thing that they were all doing, and everybody was terribly upset, so I wanted to be available. And I said to him, so forgive me, but I'm going to, and he interrupted me, and he said, yes, but what about this person that I'm dating that I found on Match.com? And he thrust a picture in my hand. I was so shocked. I was really shocked, right? And I knew what it was, but I couldn't let something like that pass. But I let him calm down, and about 10 or 15 minutes later, I doubled back and I said, are you aware you did this? Could you tell me why you did that? And at first he gave me some excuse, and then he finally said, I was afraid of what you were going to make me feel. I said, that's a good reason to do what you did. And that's often the reason here, that you're afraid that somebody's going to make you feel something you don't want to feel. I think, in my opinion, one of the most loving things that we can do for each other is go with and have a conversation about things. Certainly in my business, I got to go with. I'm going with you. You're not going to be alone. We're going to work through all of these problems. We're going to work through them together so that you can come out on the other side. I think that's something we can all do for each other. Stay there, listen, be there with them. And, I teach this. I teach people to do what I do. And in my class, I'll tell them they have to stay there. They have to go with people. So they have to be healed themselves to be able to do that. I think it is one of the kindest things in the world to be able to do that. Now, the interesting thing that I'm going to put on the table for you is you're not going to be able to wallow in this emotion, because my job is to bring you on the other side of it. So if indulgence is at any point in there, instead of just trying to understand and heal and get on the other side, we've got to address that. And some people do wallow. That's true. I've been known to do it myself. Okay. We've got to really be in there and listen. Number 3, the third point, was defensiveness may take the form of yes, but. The defensive partner will start out by placating their partner. Later, that partner will disagree and give a different opinion, thus neglecting the yes they used in the beginning of their statement. I hear this a lot in my practice. Oh, hello, Fabiola. Though some people use the phrase, though love to educate you, that's bullying, superiority, attitude, and contempt. Well, I'm not quite sure I understand that phrase, but I agree. I think contempt has a lot of superiority to it. And of course, if you are striving to have a mutually equitable and fair and lovely relationship, mature, healed child relationship with someone, we certainly can't have superiority as part of it. Okay, going back to defensiveness, I think I was going to tell you a story. Yes, what I hear from clients a lot, my job is to get you out of yourself so we can go forward with the potential, right? And so we have to get beyond certain issues, and I'll suggest, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? What would really be good for you? Maybe an improv class right now. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Yes, but I constantly hear, yes, but. And what the but always has, it is the gateway to why they cannot change, why they cannot grow, why they cannot be more loving. Why don't you go home and put your arms around your husband, darling, and tell him how much you love him and how much he means to you? Yes, but he, 40 years ago, he did this. Okay. We going to stay there or not? Defensive partners may also just continue to say what they were saying before without any regard to what the partner has said. Defensive partners may simply whine about their circumstances as well as saying it's not fair. Let's talk about fairness. Nothing is fair. Being fair, trying to be fair, and thinking of fairness like you did when you were a child, that's not fair, is inappropriate, because life isn't fair. If you're trying to do that and make it all fair, it's going to take a lot of energy, and you're going to be disappointed every time, because the one thing that you've forgotten is that you create your life, you create your luck, you're doing it, you're driving the bus, and that, my dear, is off the subject. What difference does fairness make if you're driving the bus and you're going to be fine? So drive the bus, get out there. Make sense? I hope so. I think that is a remark that's not fair, that really should be thrown out of partnership. It doesn't, which is, you misunderstand me. Let me tell you, the place I was working from, the thought, the feeling I was working from when I did that or I said that, instead of, that's not fair. No, get to the point. Get to what will really heal this, and that is information. Okay. All of you all are in a different circumstance. Some of you are in partnership. Some of you are in partnership happily. Some of you are in partnership unhappily. I understand that. I do want to put on the table that there is something, though, that is important to develop no matter what your circumstances are, and that is your knowledge of yourself. You need to know yourself very, very well. And you'll never stop. I'm going to, when we finish talking about the fourth horseman, we're about to do that now. I want to talk about growth and about all the things you need to know, and there are more things coming down the pike all the time that you need to know. You need to know yourself. You need to know your partner. They need to know themselves. They may not walk and talk yet like you do, and it doesn't matter, because if you all have mutual respect and caring for each other, and you are always investing in those things, then you'll be fine. Let's talk about the fourth husband before we go on, okay? Fourth horseman is stonewalling. Now, I'm not talking about what I said earlier, which is we're not getting anywhere in this fight, so let's just go do our thing, and tomorrow we'll talk about this. That's not stonewalling. Stonewalling is when this is chronic, when you never get to talk about anything. Isolation is the key concept here, isn't it, to stonewalling. A stonewaller is usually checked out and even lacks sometimes the energy to be defensive. A healthy receiver of information can include sounds like uh-huh or yeah, but this is a person that doesn't follow the conversation at all. It's a blank canvas. Stonewalling is a silent reaction with no verbal or nonverbal responses, and at times includes physically removing themselves from the room. So a stonewaller can just walk out on you. By not having a response, the partner utilizing stonewalling conveys a level of, and here's the word again, thank you, Fabiola, superiority, okay, disapproval, cold distancing from their partner. Gottman's research indicates that stonewalling may elicit physical reactions in females when their male partners partake in stonewalling. They have done research. It causes their females' hearts to race and the breathing to increase. Stonewalling is usually a response to the other three horsemen being present and not being addressed. It's as if you don't know how to fix anything. And this is what I mean by emotional maturity. You've got to know how to go from the ego child's mind to the highest self and stand there and be present in love and talk about this with your boundaries healthily in place. You got to find out what's really wrong while it's up and while you have the vocabulary for it. Okay. These are people that are stonewallers that don't get their needs met. And they're unable to support their partners because they're not getting their own needs met. The interesting thing to me is that I think a lot of people have no idea what they need. I've seen it over and over and over and over and over again in my life, that people have no idea what they need. So they can't ask for it. They can't go for it. There is a part of, and I'll lecture on this at some point, a part of knowing yourself that I've created. It's called the learning and communication sequence. And I noticed for years people's brains were firing in different ways. There are 9 learning and communication styles. We'll talk about this probably next week. And I've noticed for a long time that when I give anyone a test, that will figure out what their LCS is, if they don't know themselves, if they're in fantasy about themselves, and that can be a positive or a negative fantasy, they can't test well. They're not going to test well for Myers-Briggs. They're not going to test well for any of these DISC and all of these marvelous personality tests out there. You're going to get a skewed answer. The way Myers-Briggs works and DISC work is you have to be honest, totally honest. And that's something. Now, there are things that one should know about one's life. You should know about yourself. You should know what your Myers-Briggs is. There are free tests all over the internet. You could possibly find a disc test on the internet. You should know, I'll tell you about the LCS, which is my program. You need to know what your past looked like and where the major emotional wounds were, and you need to get over them. You need to know your attachment styles. We're going to talk about that again. I've already done, I think, a show on that. We're going to do it again. You need to know what your love languages are. You need to know what type of relationship you have. You have to make sure that energy is going back and forth in any relationship, whether it's a friend or an office associate, a colleague, or a partner, an intimate partner. If energy does not go back and forth, you don't have a relationship. Better face it now. Energy is exchanged. Energy is exchanged when you pay somebody for something, because money is just energy. So you come to me, you pay me, I give you my services. That's an energy exchange. That's a relationship. You understand? But you all watch these relationships where somebody is the entire giver and somebody is the entire receiver. That's not a relationship. Okay. Let's talk about love languages. Now, there are 5 of them. This is not my program, of course. I think there's a man named Dr. Gary Chapman who invented love languages. I believe that's right. If not invented them, he certainly wrote about them, but I think he was the guy. Now, I found a nice article on something called betterdaysandnights.com on love languages that kind of surmises what these are. You need to know yours, ladies and gentlemen. You need to know yours. You need to know how you feel loved, and you need to know how to give love through other means. So let's talk about this. Most of us grow up knowing about what we know about love from our parents and how they relate. Later on, we explore and find out that there's more to it than that, and we sometimes move beyond those parents, sometimes we don't. Love languages, and there are 5 different ones, can be very different. You and your partner can have quite different love languages. This cute article says that you may be as different as Mandarin is from English. And they go on to say that no matter how hard you try to express love in English, if your spouse only understands Mandarin, you'll never understand how to love each other. I thought that was a very nice little thing. By the way, I haven't found anybody who wrote this article. It's under Better Days and Nights, but there was not an author. I would certainly credit them if I did know who that was. It's rare that a husband and wife have the same love language. I know Michael and I do not. I am a words of affirmation girl all the way, all right? And he is a touch guy. So we'll talk about those in just a minute. All right. So we tend to speak our love language, and when the other person, we will demonstrate our love language. Sometimes that's in speaking, mine is. But it becomes frustrating when we don't see the other person responding to it. And they don't respond to it because it's not theirs. Guys, I could talk till the cows come home, and sometimes do. Michael will tell you. And I don't see any response from Michael for my words a lot of times. Isn't that something? But there's a great deal of response when I go and speak his love language. Now, that isn't to say that he doesn't make an attempt for mine. He certainly does. And you keep in mind that these things are not literal. It's not just telling me he loves me. It's actually reading. One of the great ways he does it is reading my book and says, this was a problem. Have you thought about doing this? What about that? Man, he's working in my domain the whole way, right? So it's a very sweet thing. So you've got to determine your love language, and there are a lot of free tests. I think there's even one you can take with Better Days and Nights to determine what your love language is. By the way, you don't just have one. You're going to have a primary one, but a lot of other things, all these tests will show you that these things are important too as secondary things and as tertiary characteristics. But to find out your love language, you're going to have these questions answered. How do I express love to others? How do I feel about what makes me feel loved? This is the other question that's not on here. What do I complain about the most? And what do I request most often? Now, speaking somebody else's love language is not going to necessarily feel comfortable for you, Dr. Chapman says. But he says we're not talking about comfort. We're talking about love. And love is something you do for someone else. And I don't know of a better way of saying that. Love is something you do for someone else. It doesn't matter if you're comfortable with it or not. Okay. So let's talk about the 5 specific love languages. Here's words of affirmation. Again, this is me all the way. To somebody like me, words of affirmation are my love language, and actions do not speak louder than words. I appreciate actions. I really do. But an unsolicited compliment means everything to me. That's sincere. Doesn't mean anything to me if it's not. In fact, it kind of angers me. It's insulting. Don't play with something as important to me as my words of affirmation. Don't play with me about this. Okay. Hearing the words I love you are important, but hearing the reasons behind the love is more important. I think that's incredibly beautiful. And insults, when you have words of affirmation as a love language, are almost too much to bear. You can be shattered with words. And they're certainly not easily forgotten. Verbal compliments or words of appreciation are powerful communicators of love. Encouraging words, and encourage means, by the way, to inspire courage. All of us have areas where we feel insecure. We lack courage, which often hinders us from accomplishing positive things that we would like to. And it's marvelous to hear words of encouragement. Good for you. Good job. When they're sincere. Don't play with words. Don't bull somebody that has this love language. It will backfire on you, and they will easily jump on you, because that's how important words are. Don't mock them. And when they're asking for the right words, what harm does it do to give it to them? Kind words are most important. If we're to communicate love verbally, we have to use kind words. This has to be the way we speak. The statement, I love you, when said with kindness and tenderness, can be a genuine expression of love. But so can saying, yes, dear, or of course, or good for you. Man, all of those are taken to heart. If you don't have words of love as your words of affirmation, as your love language, you have no clue about how important they are. Listen to me. They're important. Humble words, too, are extremely important. Love makes requests and not demands. In marriage, we're equal partners. If we're to develop an intimate relationship, we need to know each other's desires. If we make our needs known in the form of a request, we're giving guidance. It's not an ultimatum. So come out of your childhood and realize when someone says to you, darling, will you just say something nice to me? Will you just say you love me? Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. You control everything. No. No. Guys, we are giving you a real key into why things are working and why things don't, and why people don't feel safe. Every one of these is going to give you that kind of information. Know who you are, know who the other person is, and for heaven's sakes, be generous enough, kind enough, humble enough to speak their language from time to time. All right. This particular article, Better Days and Nights, offers what to do. And some of these what to do's are really quite good. This one is just, so if this is your partner's love language, set a goal to give your spouse a different compliment, sincere compliment, each day for a month. Oh, that would be lovely. Quality time. If quality time is your love language, nothing says I love you like full, undivided attention. Being there for this type of person is critical. But really being there. So put your phone away. Can't be on your phone. Can't be looking at your screen. You have to have the television off, the knife and fork down, and all the chores and tasks on standby. To make your significant other feel truly special and loved, distractions, postponed dates, or the failure to listen can be really, really hurtful. Excuse me, there's something in my eye. Okay. This means giving someone your undivided attention. This article goes on to say, this doesn't mean sitting on the couch watching television together. This means taking a walk, just the two of you, going out to eat, looking into each other's eyes when you're talking. Time is a strong communicator of love, so you need to spend time with that person. One of the most common ways of sharing quality time is a quality conversation. Two individuals sharing their thoughts and feelings. A relationship calls for sympathetic listening with a view to understanding the other person's desires. We must be willing to give advice, but only when it is requested, and never in a condescending manner. So they go on in this article to give some practical listening tips. I think these are good. Maintain eye contact when your spouse is talking. Keep your energy on them, too. Don't do something else at the same time. Listen for feelings and confirm them. Ask yourself, what emotion is my partner experiencing? Observe their body language. Refuse to interrupt. Such interruptions indicate, I don't care about what you're saying. Listen to me. Woo! Quality conversations also calls for self-revelation. In order for your partner to feel love, you must reveal yourself too. So they say, if this is your partner's love language, quality time, ask your partner for a list of 5 activities that he'd enjoy doing with you. Make plans to do one of them each month for the next 5 months. That's what their suggestion is. The next love language is gifts. They go on to say in this article, and I think this is true, don't mistake your love language for materialism. The receiver of gifts thrives on love, thoughtfulness, and the effort behind the gift. If you speak this language, the perfect gift or gesture shows that you are known, cared for, you're prized above whatever sacrifice they've had to do to get you this gift. A missed birthday or anniversary or hasty, thoughtless gift without any energy behind it can be absolutely disastrous. And so would the absence of everyday gestures. Almost everything ever written on the subject of love indicates that at the heart of love is the spirit of giving. And while all love languages challenge us to give something, right? For some, this particular love language, receiving gifts, are visible symbols of love, and they speak the loudest. A gift is something you can hold in your hand and say, look, he was thinking of me. Look, she remembered me. A gift is a symbol of that thought. To the individual who has this love language, the cost really doesn't matter much. This is about being thought of. There is also an intangible gift that that may speak more loudly than something held in the hand, and that's the physical presence in a time of crisis. That's a huge part of this. You know, we all have our different ways of and what we think is important. I can stop here and tell you about this particular love language when my mom passed away, which was very traumatic. She had spinal cancer. It was horrible. Ugh. But when she died, we had the funeral, and then everybody came back to, we just had a graveside service, and everybody came back to the house. And people brought food, and everybody was just together. It was really wonderful. A lot of my friends, young people, and because I was young then, and older folks. It was quite the beautiful mix of folks. What was interesting is that I saw everybody giving in the way they gave. My friends that were real strong thinkers brought food. They took over my schedule and made sure everything was canceled, so I had some time to grieve. They made sure, because I was at my mother's and taking care of my father, who was quite ill at the time as well, made sure my clothes were cleaned and pressed, and they brought anything that I needed from the other house over. They were wonderful. I had friends that, to them, it was all about feeling. They brought my favorite pistachio ice cream, way too many goodies that were comfort food. They talked about the emotional journey of losing a parent. It was really quite beautiful. And then there were doers, these people that really love to jump into action and do something physical, and that's how they handle things. And I didn't know what they were going to do. I was kind of watching this, just not expecting anything, but it was just so fascinating to see all this unfold. I also think that when you are grieving, you watch things to kind of distract yourself. There were some men that were very physical. I used to teach acting more than I do now, although I still do it. And there were people that were wrestlers and that had decided they wanted to be actors. People that were, in my class that were very physical people. Well, they sculpted the yard. They came over and cut the grass before people got there. They planted flowers. It was in the spring, and they got it beautiful. Everybody gave in their way. Isn't that beautiful? Well, I think so. And I felt incredibly loved by everybody that way. So, if gifts are the love language, I think that most of us do this anyway. I don't go and keep a notebook, but I am very, very aware of when my husband, particularly my husband, because he's hard to buy for. Men are hard to buy for. I had a friend that studied with me, and he said it took 27 years, I think he'd been married 27 years, to realize that all his wife ever wanted was jewelry. I kind of feel the same way. So, anyway, but these people at, what is it, Better Days and Nights, said keep a gift idea notebook, that every time you hear your spouse say, I really like that, write it down, select gifts that, through the year that they would enjoy. The next love language are acts of service. And this article says, can vacuuming the floor be an expression of love? And it absolutely can, is the answer, of course. Anything you do to ease the burden of responsibilities weighing on an acts of service person will speak volumes. The words he or she most want to hear is, let me do that for you. Let me help you with that. So laziness, broken commitments, and making more work for them says to this love language that they don't matter. People who speak this love language seek to please their partners by serving them, to express their love for them by doing things for them, actions such as cooking a meal, setting a table, washing the dishes, sorting the bills, walking the dog, dealing with landlords. They are all acts of service. They require thought. They require planning, time, effort, and energy. Now, here's the key. They have to be done with a positive spirit. And then they're expressions of love. If you resent that, it doesn't qualify. Okay? Now, this article goes on to say they're not saying to become a doormat to your partner and do things out of guilt and resentment. No. You do things as a lover. That's the only reason to do things, right? I think so too. And they say if acts of service are your partner's love language, what would they like? Is there anything that they're complaining about that you could sneak behind them and do? You might look at that. Let's talk about physical touch. This is the next one. It's important to know that this language isn't all about the bedroom. A person whose primary language is physical touch is not surprisingly very touchy. Hugs, pats on the back, holding hands, and thoughtful touches on the arm, shoulder, and face. They can all be ways to show excitement, concern, care, and love. Physical presence and accessibility is crucial. Both of those things are crucial, while neglect or abuse can be unforgivable and destructive. Holding hands, kissing, hugging, and sex, all of these are lifelines for the person to whom physical touch is the primary love language. With it, they feel secure in their partner's love. Love touches don't take any time. You see? But they do require a little thought and you coming out of your own agenda, especially if it isn't your primary love language. So sitting close to each other as you watch television, touching each other as you leave the house, when you return, brief kisses, pats and rubs, all of that, important. They say, if this is your partner's love language, when sitting together, let your knee or foot drift over and touch your partner. I think you can be more creative than that, don't you? Yeah, that's what I think. All right, guys. Glad to talk about that today. Our time is almost up, so I'm going to stop right there, except to say there's a lot to being a good partner. If you do not have a partner yet, you have one thing to work on: yourself. You want to free yourself from your past. You want to resolve all that. If you find out what your tendencies are. If you have a tendency to blame, if you have a tendency to fly off the handle, if you have a tendency toward anything that you know for a fact is going to get in the way of a good relationship. And how can you find these out? Look at your past relationships. Okay? Then it's going to be real important for you to get beyond that now. Thank you, Sheila. Have a blessed day to you too. It's going to be real important to work on these things so that when someone comes along, you all match. You can only bring in what you yourself are. Okay? So I think that requires some work myself. Because we can change, we can grow, we can become something more. We can become more loving. Real important. So next week, we're going to talk about relationship attachment style relative to partnerships. By the way, if you already have a partner, good for you. You're just going to be working on yourself as you go. Don't expect the partner to work on him or herself. Work on yourself. You can share this information if they're interested. If they're not, work on yourself. Work on yourself. Guys, thank you so much for listening, and I want to thank you very much for getting the word around about our show. It means a lot to me. And we don't advertise except word of mouth and the platform of social media. So as you can send out these shows and tell people about these shows, wow, does that mean a lot to us. We're here every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Daylight Savings Time. I don't know when we switch to Eastern Standard Time, but I'll find that out because I've got to be right about that. You guys have a wonderful...
90 seconds.
Okay, 90 seconds. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful week. All right, and be very good to yourself. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it a lot. I love you all, and I really care about you. I want you to have nice lives. Okay? Look at yourselves, guys. Work to be done. Oh, Sheila, thank you so much. Sheila's already shared the show. Thank you so much, darling. God bless you all, and have a wonderful week. Love you. Bye-bye.